We have a special guest setting up your daily CCR today. Take a look.
Hi guys, it's Miss Eichner. I hope you guys are doing well. I miss you so much and wish I could see your smiling faces. Here's daily CCR 74. Okay guys, let's start with number 1. So it says, Spencer sold 6 pumpkins. Each pumpkin weighed 2/3 of a pound. How many pounds did the pumpkins weigh all together? So let's start by bracketing our question. How many pounds did the pumpkins weigh all together? Since we have our hint word in our question, we know we're looking for our total. All right? Our other hint word we have is each. And since we know we're looking for our total, we know each means we need to multiply. So Spencer sold 6 pumpkins, and each of those pumpkins weighed 2/3 of a pound. So we know we need to do 6 times 2/3. But we're not creating equivalent fractions, so we're not multiplying by the whole 6/6. We're actually we want to make the pounds bigger because there's 6 pumpkins. We need to know the pounds all together. So we need to do 6 times 2/3. So our 6 times 2, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. 12/3 when we do our 6 times 2/3. So 12/3 we know is an improper fraction, but you guys know how to make it a proper fraction. So you'll name that whole. So in this case, it's 3/3. So once you know the whole, you'll be able to make it into a proper fraction or a mixed number. All right, let's go down to number 2. So it says, Smiley Cole ate 5/8 of his candy. Ben ate more candy than Cole. What fractions could be the amount that Ben ate? All right, bracket the question. What fractions could be the amount that Ben ate? And we know Ben ate more candy than Cole did, and Cole ate 5/8 of his candy. So 5/8, if we look at it, 5/8 is more than half, right? So if any of these are more than half, we know that can be our answer because the fraction has to be bigger. So more than half, more than half. This is half, so we know that can't be one of our answers. And this also is bigger than half. So this could be one. So let's look at A. We have 2/3 and 5/8. So let's write our 5/8 and 2/3 on the side here. So we can't use our strategy of comparing to a half anymore. We can't do a whole either. So let's think of 5 and 6, where we have to change our denominators so we can compare the fractions. We can't turn 8 into 3 or 3 into 8. So what do? Strategy 6, which is multiplying by each other's denominators. So for 5/8, we'll multiply by the whole 3/3, and 2/3 we'll multiply by the whole 8/8. So 5 times 3, 15. 8 times 3, 24. 2 times 8, we get 16, 24ths. So we see that 2/3 is actually bigger than 5/8. So this could be amount that Ben ate. So you're gonna use the same strategy number 6, to figure out if 3/5 and 7/12 are bigger than 5/8. Okay, let's move down to number 3. So it says, which decimal is larger? Circle your choice, show them as a fraction also. So we have 2 tasks. First, we're finding which decimal is larger. We're circling our choice. That's our first one. And then for our task number 2, we're going to show them as fractions. So we have 3/10 and we have 29/100. So let's look at these. Do they have the same number of digits? No. And we know in order to compare our decimals, they have to have the same number of digits, right? So 3/10, 29/100. We're going to add a 0 to our 3/10 to make it 30/100. So now they have the same number of digits. They look the same, so we can compare them. So we need to know which one is larger. So either way, if we said 3/10 and 2/10, we know 3/10 is bigger than 2/10, and 30/100 is bigger than 29/100. So we know 3/10 is bigger than 29/100. But now we need to show them as a fraction. So say it in your head as you're writing the fraction. So this is 30/100 and 29/100. Okay? So you're going to want to write both of those as a fraction before we move up to number 4. All right. So moving on. Number 4, if Cameron poured 2/3 a cup of water on Mr. Hutch and Mr. Hutch poured 6/8 cup of water on Cameron, how much water did they pour in all? So bracketing the question, how much water did they pour in all? In all, we know means we're looking for our total, right? So Cameron poured 2/3 a cup of water and Mr. Hutch poured 6/8 a cup of water on Cameron. So in all, we need to add our 2/3 and our 6/8. So go ahead, let's write our 2/3 and our 6/8. But we know we can't add these fractions because their denominators are not the same. So once again, we're gonna think of our strategies. We have to make our denominators the same. So we can't turn 3 into 8 or 8 into 3. So once again, we're gonna multiply by each other's denominators. So we're gonna do times 8 over 8 and the whole 3/3. So once you do your 2 times 8, your 3 times 8, and your 6 times 3 and 8 times 3, you're gonna have the same denominators, so you'll be able to add both of the fractions to find out how much water they poured in all. All right, let's go down to number 5. So it says, on the first day of the My Little Pony Festival, Sunny walked 2/10 of a mile. On the second day, Sam walked 8/100 of a mile. How far did they walk all together? First, we're gonna show these as fractions and then add. So let's bracket the question. How far did they walk all together? Once again, it's in our question, so we know we're looking for our total. So we have 2 tasks. We have to show them as fractions, and then we have to add them. All right, so 2 tasks. So Sunny walked 2/10 of a mile, and Sam walked 8/100 of a mile. So let's write our decimals out. So we have 2/10 and 8/100. So just like we asked ourselves in number 3, do these look the same? Do they have the same number of digits? No. But if we add, so we need to add our 0 at the end of our 2/10. So now we have 20/100 and 8/100. All right, so they look the same. So now we can turn them into fractions. So 20/100, and plus 8/100. So denominators are the same. We can add our fractions to see how far they walked all together. All right, very last one, number 6. So it says subtract 3 4/8 minus 1 6/8. So you guys haven't actually done this yet with Mr. Hutch. So if you don't get it the first time, it's okay. We're just gonna do a little sneak peek of it. So when we subtract mixed numbers, the first thing we have to do is we have to look at the fraction. So we're gonna try and subtract the fraction first. And our fractions here are 4/8 minus, we wanna do 6/8. But we can't do that, right? We can't do 4 minus 6. Nope. So what we have to do is we have to regroup, all right? How we regroup is we pull out a whole. So we're gonna take a whole from this 3, and the whole, if we look at this fraction, name that whole, we're gonna use 8/8. So we have to do 8/8 plus, oops, sorry, went over that 4, plus our 4/8, right? So denominators are the same, so we can do that. We get our 12/8. But we took out a whole from our whole number here, so 3 wholes minus 1 whole, since we took out that whole of 8/8, gives us 2. Now we can subtract our fractions, correct? So fractions first. 12/8 minus 6/8 gets us 6/8. And then we subtract our whole numbers. 2 whole minus 1 whole equals 1 6/8. All right, so anyone looking for the challenge, you can try and simplify this mixed number, right? See what whole you can divide by if you want the challenge to see if you can simplify it. All right, that was number 6, so we're all good. So once you finish your daily CCR though, make sure on Explain Everything, you zoom out all the way so Mr. Hutch can see the whole thing. You screenshot it and then turn it into him on, what's that called? Class Dojo. All right, great job, guys.